Hello and welcome to this Thursday edition of FreightWaves Now. I'm your host Anthony Smith, and Michael Vincent is back with us, and he's going to give us a shipper update. But first, we're going to go to Zach Strickland with a carrier update brought to you by PowerFleet. Stay tuned.
Hey everyone, and welcome to your Thursday carrier update presented by PowerFleet. I'm Zach Strickland. So, looking at our tender rejection index, it's finally happening. Our tender rejection index took a significant jump up yesterday from 25.15 to 25.83%. The market got a little bit tighter, but it got a lot tighter in relation to where it has been. So normally we consider hovering around that 25% mark to be about where we have been since September. A few intermittent spikes here and there, but you see yesterday we had a pretty strong jump. And if you look at the year over year, and where I have positioned on the yellow and green lines down there, 2018, 2019, we seasonally see this jump right before Christmas every single year. So capacity has probably seen its loosest time of December here in the last couple of days or so. And now we're going to drive through into the end of the year. I suspect we'll break through that Thanksgiving boundary, as we tend to do. If you look back historically speaking, we tend to get a lot tighter than we did over Thanksgiving. I expect that to happen yet again, probably getting close to that 30% tender rejection rate once again. So we'll see here over the next week or so. Do not expect this market to get any looser than it already has been this month. So looking at our regional tender rejection rates, we don't necessarily get tight everywhere all at once. This is one of those examples, even though through most of the country we are seeing tightening. If you look in the, over in the Northwest, for instance, has not gotten any tighter. It's been significantly loosening since Thanksgiving. We're down probably the lowest tender rejection rate of all the regions. It's also the smallest region in terms of overall freight volume at 20.88%. The West Coast, I take that back. The West Coast is the loosest region right now. Ironically, 20.36% versus 20.88%. But the West Coast seems to be getting more supply than the rest of the country right now. However, the Northwest is on a downward trend, whereas the West Coast has got a slight uptick in it right now over the last day or so. Also in the Northeast, getting tighter. The Southeast, however, looking at that over here in the green line, actually not getting tighter either. So just yet, I would anticipate that that's going to change here in the next day or so. So not all markets are moving evenly right now. Most of the country, we see there in that blue line, if you can find it behind all this this noise right now, the blue line taking the most significant increase in tender rejection rates over the last day, jumping all the way up to 29.27%, the largest region of the country. So that is a significant move. So let's find out where in the country, which markets are driving this tightness over the last day or so the most significantly. The Southeast, you can see, relatively quiet right now. A lot of white on our weighted rejection index. This is an index, of course, that's going to allow you to pick out the most significant tender rejection rates. Where is capacity tightening with the most volume in the United States? Southeast, all white on the map for the most part. So not as much activity there. The Northeast continues to have a few little spikes right out here. We've got them outlined over here, the highest weighted rejection index to the lowest weighted rejection index values. You can see Los Angeles and Ontario down there in the red over in the West Coast, keeping capacity, I'm not going to say loose, but it's not getting tighter over there at the moment. And then Boston, Massachusetts, Baltimore leading the way. Now, Joliet, Illinois, one of the largest freight markets in the United States, of course, one of those hubs right around the Chicago area. You can see that over there in the darker blue right around the Great Lakes, jumping up pretty significantly. So let's look at Joliet real quick. Joliet, Illinois, you can see the tender rejection rate jumping up. Volumes actually starting to slide down. So this is a capacity situation. Capacity's coming offline. The drivers are starting to figure out they need to get home, so they can't take as many loads going across the country. Capacity starting to tighten quite a bit out of Joliet right now. Volumes coming down. Looking in Ontario, California, if you remember, that was the market that was loosening one of the most significantly on the weighted rejection index. Volumes actually coming up as tender rejection rates coming down. So a lot of you carriers out there are on the West Coast covering that freight, and that'll do it for today's carrier update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.
Good morning, welcome to your shipper update. I'm Michael Vincent. On this Thursday morning, let's jump into it. Outbound tender volumes across the nation. I have it in blue for this year, orange and green for the previous 2 years. Orange 2019, green is 2018. You can see them taking that slide, and that's going to continue throughout the rest of the year as we go into the holiday Christmas kind of volume slump that occurs every year, very seasonal. We see that every single year, and that will continue. But interestingly, or not interestingly, what we're seeing here is that outbound tender rejects are increasing as capacity is coming offline. This is a capacity-driven tightening right now as drivers are heading home for the holidays and coming offline. This happens seasonally, and we expect that to jump up here and we'll come close to that 30% rejection rate, if not break it, by the time we get into Christmas and New Year's week next week. Moving forward, if we look at the van outbound tender rejects versus, which is in the blue, versus the reefer, which is in orange, and flatbed, which is in yellow, we see all three modes with their uptick, which will continue throughout the year. So we've seen the loosest it's going to be this year. It's now going to get tighter and tighter as we move into the holidays. Moving forward, the outbound average length of haul also is ticking up as we see that change in where the volume is coming from and going to, from the regional and local to the long haul coming off the coast and out of those major distribution centers as the average length of haul increases. So that's where your volume is moving to right now. Looking at the outbound tender rejects in the colors here on the map and the outbound volumes in the height of this map, you can see, and these are all modes, you can see where the tightness of capacity is here in the center of the country, in the northeast, Pittsburgh, up into Buffalo, and even Harrisburg, and into Baltimore there. The rejection rate is increasing over there, and through Arkansas, Little Rock, Missouri, et cetera, and up into Iowa. The tender rejections are quite high as volumes in other markets are bringing that capacity out of there. If you look at the volume level out of Atlanta is very high, Harrisburg very high, Columbus very high, the West Coast here in Los Angeles very high, as those major distribution hubs sending that freight across the country. Moving into the van, you can see in this one, this is just van mode where that volume is coming from. Harrisburg quite high, Columbus, Ohio quite high, Atlanta, and again on the West Coast, Seattle, and also Southern California in the Ontario market, very, very high. You can see the effects of Houston over here tightening the capacity in New Orleans. And you see Pittsburgh, if you're in the Pittsburgh market as a shipper, your capacity is quite tight right now and going to continue to be tight and get tighter. Also over here in Chicago, you can see capacity tightening as those volumes move up and capacity comes offline. Looking at the refrigerated, usual suspects. Florida, Central Florida here, sucking the capacity out of northern Florida and southern Georgia. Center of the country, very high rejection rates over here in the Little Rock area, et cetera. If we look forward here at the rates, we can see outbound tender rejects here taking that dip, now starting to come back over here in the magenta, and the rates, spot rates, following the exact same pattern here, coming down right now. They've dropped off that 307 to the 290 mark in the van market. That's your shipper update. I'm Mike Vincent.
Thanks so much for tuning in for this Thursday edition of FreightWaves Now. As always, you can check out all of our content on your favorite streaming platforms, including Apple TV. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.